Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performers Podcast. I'm your host, Thor Conklin, and today we have Peter Montoya. You know, as a world speaker, many times you see people get on stage and quite frankly, the message doesn't always relate to what they've done in their past. But Peter's different. Peter not only is a very successful entrepreneur, created a company back in 2008, software company that he exited in 2018. He brings his business knowledge, inspirational journey, and human behavior insight. This is something that I absolutely love because I think the human behavior aspect of it, if you don't have that as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, it's really difficult to run a company. So major piece. Best-selling author, The Brand Called You, and The Personal Branding Phenomenon, and the newest book, Leadership Power. Peter, welcome to the show.
Oh, Thor, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
All right. You know, interesting times that we're living through right now. And with COVID-19 going on, business has certainly shifted. I have people in the real estate area. I've got manufacturers, dentists. You know, some of the companies are kind of limping along at this point. This is the third week in March. Others have absolutely cratered. I'm a public speaker as well. And I don't think we're getting too many gigs right now.
That's very true. I think what we're experiencing here is a seismic event on the size and scope of World War II. So it's hard to know completely, but I think it's going to completely transform both our social structure, our political structure, and probably our business structure. So in the last 3 weeks, more or less, we had a chessboard where our chess pieces were moving around it, and someone took that chessboard and threw all the pieces in the air. And I think now some of them are temporarily starting to come back into place, and we're starting to find our grounding again. But ultimately, the impacts of COVID-19, I don't think we'll really understand them for 5 or 10 years. But it's a big event.
Yeah, I think I see a lot of entrepreneurs under this assumption or delusion or optimistic thought process of, you know, once we get out of quarantine, it's back to the game. Demand's going to come right back. Travel will come back, you know, and it's business as usual. I am hopeful and prayerful of that. But my risk management background and my understanding of business for the last 21 years is machines just don't turn back on, and then human behavior is very different. I think we're all ready and willing to run out and go to a restaurant and kind of get back to things. But it's going to be a very difficult environment to get the engine going back. So as a business leader, you know, and an entrepreneur, what is your advice to entrepreneurs out there? You know, once we get, let's, before we get to that question, let's assume that everyone is doing what's responsible. That is cutting costs, staying very close to your vendors, staying very close to your clients, communicating consistently with them, and doing all those things to kind of plug up the holes. There's no sense paddling a canoe down the river if you've got a big hole in it. You just figure if you just go faster, less water will get in. So we got to plug up those holes first. But after that, quarantine's lifted, we're back to business. How do we get this thing ramped back up? What do you tell the entrepreneurs out there?
Well, I've been absolutely inspired by the everyone who I talk to, whether it be in the nonprofit sector, the business sector, and how everyone's handling this. And how I see people handling this is a couple things. Number one, it seems to me that almost everyone I come across, despite what I see in the news, is people are putting people first. So yes, there are some outliers out there who are thinking about their businesses or organizations or schools or churches first, but most everyone I see is putting people first, and then the safety of their people absolutely first, and that is paramount. I really believe that we all have a moral compass that has to be set, and my moral compass is set around human well-being. So maximizing human well-being, and so making money at the cost of people is not moral to me. So that's the first thing that I see, and I absolutely applaud that. Second thing I've seen business owners absolutely pivot. So they are very on a regular basis consuming themselves with as much good information possible, being skeptical, and skepticism is a really important skill set for business owners. Skepticism means that you only believe what warrants good believing in. God bless you, Thor.
Thank you. I try to make that as quiet as possible.
I know. You did well. So that, we want to make sure that we only put the relevant amount of belief, or my belief is consistent with the amount of available evidence. So if I hear a rumor off the internet, I really don't believe it. If it comes from a very credible source like Dr. Fucci, well, it's got a lot more evidence for me. So, you're applying evidence based on belief based on level of evidence. That's really, really important as a skill set as a business owner. And then all of us are kind of looking to pivot. So, where is the business going? I'm confident that in some period of time, would it be 3 years or 5 years, our economy will be even bigger than it was in 2019.
I agree.
Very confident of that. It's just going to look different than it does now.
Yeah.
And there will be a new normal. It just won't be the old normal.
Yeah. Yeah. I know one of the things that you speak an awful lot on is high performance teams and how to empower them. And that's going to be key. When it comes down to it, when you have a great team that's executing, you can accomplish the things that you need to accomplish. And one of the kind of themes I kept hearing over and over again with a lot of clients was, well, the unemployment rate is 3.5%. I can't find great people. But great people don't seem to want to, come, and the people that I have don't want to work hard enough. I think we're going to end up with a very different kind of employee mindset and team mindset going forward. Many are not going to be employed right away. There's going to be a longer period of unemployment even after the health crisis is over. And many will have new teams. So what do you tell those organizations on how to empower them and create peak performers?
Oh, that's a great question. One of my favorite questions. So let me go a little bit back and kind of unpack the word empowerment first. So let me ask you this question first, Thor. Thor, here's the question.
All right.
Do you want more power, and why or why not?
Do I want more power?
Yeah, personally, do you want more power?
Wow, that's a really interesting question. I consider myself a very powerful human. And my first reaction to that was, no, I don't need any more power. All the power that I have is within me already. There's a lot of things that I aspire to, but power, no. And that's kind of seems weird that I'm saying no to that answer.
That's great. That's great. Power. It's a great starting point. I'm so glad you answered no, because I'm going to change your mind. All right.
Okay.
So here's the definition of power.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
What my core belief in life, or one of my core drivers is that every day I figure out how to become more loving, more giving, constantly honing and stripping away all those things that don't support me. 5 years ago, I was 60 pounds overweight.
Wow.
2 years ago, I did 2 Ironmans in 30 days.
Good for you.
I'm always looking for that constant improvement,
right?
But I've never put it in terms of power, unless it's kind of personal power. Then I'm always trying to amp up that personal power. But I'm not even with the name Thor, I'm not one of those, give me power.
Right.
All right. So that's my final answer.
Great answer. I'm glad you answered that way. And that answer is very similar to how most people answer the question. Because the whole idea, the notion of power by most people is kind of evil. It's like, hegemonic, They kind of conjure up a vision of some fat cat CEO sitting in a corner office, making other people's lives miserable at their expense for their own benefit. And that's the perception of power. But here's the definition of power. Power is the ability to achieve intended results. Power is the ability to achieve intended results. So wherever you are in life, and whenever you look out at what you might want, and what you might want might be evil and hegemonic. However, most people I know don't operate from that. Most people, they want, a better relationship with their wife and kids. They want to be able to take vacations of meaning, to travel unique places around the world. They want wonderful experiences. They want to be able to put their kids through college. They want to be able to donate more to charity. They want richer lives by and large. Well, all of those are power. So when you say, I want to improve and I want to get better, that is more power. Power is the ability to achieve intended results.
Interesting. So in that case, yes, I will take more power.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Right? Sign me up.
Yes, please. You know, it's so fascinating too, because the human or the English language, and I'm sure this applies around the world. It's so interesting because if we talked about something and we were working together, and I said, you know, I need some more time from you on this project. Mm-hmm. My idea of what time means on this project is something possibly completely different of what you mean. Even in relationships, the wife says, hey, we need to spend more quality time. Well, look, we're sitting on the couch watching the game. That's what I call quality time. You know, and we have this disconnect with words, and we think that everyone uses the same universal explanation. I've never heard power described that way, but the way you described it, the definition you gave it, is perfect. And I think so often in teams, there's a miscommunication along the way that what I intended for my communication to mean was completely different than what the rest of the team members mean. And I'm sure in peak performance teams, we've all got to be on the same page using the same language.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite ways to train is to actually give the definitions and unpack notions, so to make sure that we're talking about the exact same idea when we start talking about power or boundaries or empathy. So we're all on the same page of understanding what it actually means and how it actually affects us on a regular basis. So, I think the most important thing that any human being can do is increase their power. Evidence of that, even right behind you. I see a shelf full of book. You're constantly trying to increase your knowledge so you have more what are called predictable models. So you actually know how the world works to actually be able to navigate things with less energy and get better results. Reading is a phenomenal way. Listening to podcasts is a phenomenal way of increasing your power.
Interesting. So out of all let's give some practical tips or strategies that people can take. All right. I want a peak performance team. My team might be a little different than it was going into the COVID situation. What are 2 or 3 things that you can do in order to create peak performance?
I'll tell you what, I'll give you the definition for empowered. That's a common theme. So, a lot of business owners say, I want to empower my team. I want to give them more power. And we go, great. How do we do that? I don't even know what that means. So here's actually the formula for how you empower your team. First of all, your team needs to be absolutely crystal clear on the mission that they are trying to achieve, both as an organization, as an individual contributor, and or maybe as part of the team. They need to be crystal clear as to what their mission is. I can kind of contrast this against the old style of leadership. And the old style of leadership is do what I tell you. So yeah, it was a
crystal clear on the task at hand. Here's the task, right. Get it done. Yeah.
So 50 years ago was more or less you had an overbearing boss who was threatening you. You had most likely worked in agriculture, manufacturing, maybe some kind of service job, and you had a job to do. You had to turn a wrench, plant a seed, something along those lines, and you are basically a robot on a regular basis. But today, in this very complex world, innovative environment, which is really based on evolving solutions. And so we need our contributors. That's the word that I use instead of employees. Employees is kind of like,
I like that, contributor
player or some kind of object out there for me to manage. And these people are individual contributors, and they are contributing part of them as their job. Then you have absolute clear where organization is going. So they can actually make decisions as close as they can to the field, wherever they are, that are in alignment with the mission. That's number one. Number 2 is absolute responsibility. And absolute responsibility has become quite famous in the last couple of years because of our Navy SEAL. Why am I forgetting his name right now? Jocko Willink. Have you seen Jocko Willink's TED Talk? So we call that absolute responsibility. We've been calling it absolute responsibility for years, and he calls it ownership, which is supremely different than responsibility. Responsibility is largely about who is to fault or who is to blame. That is what responsibility is about. And absolute responsibility is about owning the outcome, your outcome, independent of what happens, without fault, blame, or shame. And it is a world-changing paradigm shift when you own the outcome, because we as human beings, by and large, cannot change what we do not own. So absolute responsibility helps us own the result, and then it empowers us to make changes along the way to make sure we ensure the outcome we want. And then the third part of empowerment is competence. That could be your hard skills, whether it be, dental hygienist or engineering or real estate sales. But more importantly, most likely it's your soft skills, especially around decision making. So we want to empower our people. We make sure they're crystal clear on mission. They have ownership. They know exactly what the boundaries are of all the decisions they can make, and you want to give them maximum ability to make the maximum number of decisions, and then also empower them, give them the skills. They might need hard skills, soft skills to do their jobs. That's how we empower our people. In the old days, as I've alluded to before, leadership was about command and control. I, as the owner, give you the strategy, the vision, and tell you what to do, and you go out and do it. That was the old model of leadership. And the modern form of leadership, almost all of leadership is leadership development. The number one job of any company owner or manager is to develop leaders in their organization. Every organization today should set up their mission as a leadership development organization.
I like it. So 3 things: crystal clear on the mission, absolute responsibility, and competence.
That's it.
That's it. I love it. One of my talks, I talk about leadership, and I asked the audience, I said, who here is a manager? And, you'll see several people raise their hand. I said, who likes to manage? And of course, some of the hands will go down, and then, some of the hands will still stay up. I like to manage. And in some cases, I'll actually walk through the audience. I said, really? Do you really like to manage people? They go, yeah. I said, well, let me ask you this. Do you consider your style of management managing them, coaching, mentoring, or leading them? They're like, oh, I coach, mentor and lead them. I said, exactly. But what we've gotten into the mindset of is managing results and either rewarding or punishing those behaviors. But when you're coach as a manager, if you're coaching, mentoring, or leading, it's just a different mindset. And I love the fact that I think great organizations do create leaders, because when you create leaders underneath you, the job gets so much easier.
Oh, yeah.
It really does.
It does. I looked at I had a software company. I sold it in 2018. And by 2015 or 16, my people were so amazingly competent that there was very little for me to do.
Right. That's called ownership, right?
It was ownership.
Company. It's like, look, I have a piece of Amazon and GE and Walmart. No one asked me to come to work because I'm an owner through their stock of the company. I don't go to work. That's and we get wrapped up in this thing, I think, as entrepreneurs, that, we become one of the people in the organization that without us, it doesn't work. And that's because you're not developing the leaders.
Yeah. So let me give you another distinction here along those lines. So when I first started off as an entrepreneur when I was 28 years old, I was an amazing producer. I've got ADHD, which is both a blessing and a curse. It's a curse. It was really hard to get through school. I still have a really hard time with classroom learning, but it's a blessing because people think that ADHD is no attention span. It's not no attention span. It's all attention span or no attention span. So when I finally got into work and I was impassioned by it, I could work for 12 to 14 hours a day. I was hyperactive and I focus. I could work for 12 to 14 hours a day, and I became an amazing personal producer. I could, speak. I could create content. I could manage a company. I could go out and get capital. I was doing all those things. And as I started hiring new people, I didn't know how to develop leaders when I first started. So I basically told them what to do. I went back to my office and did my work. And my teams were initially kind of dysfunctional because I didn't spend nearly enough time with the people. And as I finally started getting closer to 25, 35, and 50 people, I finally figured it out. And I could only spend an hour or two on my personal production, whether it be sales or delivering meetings. And the other 60% of my time, 70% of my time was spent developing my people in meetings, training, one-on-ones, developing my people. And that's a really huge lesson for entrepreneurs, is to get out of personal production and into leadership development.
You talk about the it factor. What is it?
Yeah. Well, we always look at that. We look at these really aspirational leaders, whether it be like a John F. Kennedy or a Mother Teresa, and we go, wow, they have it and I don't have it. And that is completely and totally not true. everyone can be a leader. Everyone already is a leader. I think that there's actually 3 domains of leadership, and they are as follows. So the first one we think of is leadership of organizations and teams, and people, kind of like these, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King kind of people. That's what we kind of think of when we think about a leader, and that's one form of leadership. The second form of leadership is actually leadership, of family and friends. My wife has one of her parenting principles is that always make sure you're a better influence on your friends than they are on you. And that's what we have to do, is we are always influencing others, whether we know it or not. And then the third one is leadership of self. Now, what's really interesting is leadership of self, I think, is harder than leadership of others. Yeah. And everyone, whether they know it or not, actually is a leadership of themselves. And there's a really easy way to gauge your leadership skills. And it's really simple. You look at your life as it is right now, your living situation, your transportation, your relationships, your job, your bank statement, your education level, your friends, your fulfillment level, quality of your relationships, where all of those are right now. That is your level of leadership. That's it. That's it, right? That's the best assessment we got.
I love that. On that note, Peter, we could go on for hours, but I don't think there's any better way to end this than on that place right there, because really that's what it comes down to. All those things you just described are the things that show up or don't show up as a result of your self-leadership. So, Peter, thank you very much. Stay safe during this difficult time, and hope you get back on that stage soon. So I know.
Me too.
Absolutely. Isn't it such just a rush? Somebody asked me the other day that we're talking about extroverts and introverts, and they said, "What's the difference?" And I said, "Well, the introvert is kind of shy, and the extrovert is kind of look it out on stage and do whatever." And she gave me a different explanation. She said, "Introverts charge themselves and get energy when they're by themselves. Extroverts get charged when they're in front or around people." I said, "Well, I'm definitely an extrovert." But I said, one thing that happens, I don't know if this happens to you on stage or not, is, I'm lit. I'm ready to go. But as soon as it's over, I crash like it's like a sugar high that just, it's like, and I'm just like, I just need some quiet time.
So yeah, you do get a huge rush of both adrenaline and sometimes even oxytocin. And then as soon as you're done with that, after people are done talking to you, you usually do crash for a while.
Yeah,
absolutely. And the longer the speech, the bigger the crash.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Peter, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to have all the information in the show notes. So reach out to Peter and hire him for your next corporate event. Thank you very much.
You're a great interviewer, Thor. I love talking with you today.
Thank you very much. Same here.